So I want to talk about this whole narrative that South Texas is turning red, the 956, the Rio Grande Valley is turning red. And I'm not going to get into the semantics of all of that. There's polls that show there may have been a very slight uptick, but it's just not happening at this huge level that people think it is. But I want to talk about one of the things that Republicans are doing that are contributing to the narrative that the Valley is turning red, that South Texas is turning red. And that is Republicans are not being honest about who they are as candidates. From Mayra Flores, who's running to be a congresswoman again, to some local judges, Republicans, one, are not putting Republican on their materials. Two, they're using Democratic colors, so they're using a lot of blue on their signs. And three, they sound like Democrats. Whenever they're out there knocking on doors, whenever they're out there giving speeches, they sound like Democrats because they're talking about policies that Democrats support. So what is kind of happening down here is a good old bait and switch. You have Republicans that are running as either Republicans, or you also have Republicans who are running as Democrats to get on the ballot because we know the Rio Grande Valley is a Democratic stronghold. And so we have a lot of dishonest candidates out there who are presenting themselves as something that they are not. I went to a candidate forum for Hispanic women some months ago, and Mayra Flores was there. I'm focusing on her because she's kind of the big culprit of this. She was on the stage. She sounded like a Democrat. In fact, I think she even quoted AOC and took some of AOC's talking points. And her opponent, her primary opponent at the time, supported free college for all. I'm like, that is a Bernie Sanders stance. And so we have these people that are presenting themselves as something as they're not. And then also I've heard numerous stories of their block walking team, the people who go knock on doors, say that, oh, they're liberal, they're this, they're that, to confuse voters. And so we have Republicans that are acting as Democrats to get into office to say that, oh, and once they get into office, they say, oh, conservatism, republicanism won, when no, you kind of got into office being dishonest. But two, you have people who have been Republicans their whole life that are running as Democrats. And they might be Democrat on paper, they're also called dinos, they might be Democrat on paper, but when they vote in the Texas legislature, whenever they vote in Congress, or whatever the case may be, they are essentially Republicans. And we're going to see more of this in 2026, where there's probably going to be some opportunities for the state legislature here. And there's going to be people who are Republicans and have voted Republicans. Their voting record is very, very prominent in public, that are going to be likely running as Democrats. And my fear is that we have redistricting coming up in 2030. That is Texas's chance to completely ungerrymander Texas. Hopefully we could have a Democratic governor and lieutenant governor by then. I think it's possible. We're headed that way. But 2030 is our time to ungerrymander Texas and draw fair districts. What I fear is we have Republicans that are going to be running as Democrats in 2026 or 2028, even 2030, because the maps will be drawn in 2031, that are going to then flip into the Republican as we get closer to that. And we saw that with Ryan Guillen here in South Texas, who was a Democrat his whole life, and then he switched to the Republican Party, and now he's one of the biggest Latino sellouts, vendidos ever. So if you live in the Valley, South Texas, or literally if you live anywhere, and you're a Democrat, please make sure that who you're supporting is not a Republican and has been acting as a Democrat, but is actually a Republican. Or if you're a Democrat and you're voting, please make sure that the candidate that comes to your door, that you interact with, that their staff, ask them, are they a Republican or are they Democrat? What are their stances on some of these issues? And listen to make sure that they are not fooling you, because they are doing that. And let's just make something very clear here. The Texas Republican Party has made it very clear that they are hell-bent determined on flipping South Texas to red. Why? because they've lost Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, Houston. They lost all those major cities. They've lost a lot of the suburbs around them or are losing them, and they're going to lose them within the next few years. And so now they're targeting South Texas to turn this area red. And so they're confusing voters about the candidates, they're confusing voters about policies, so they could get their Republican candidates into office, whether it's one as a Republican because they confuse people, or two as a Democrat to then flip to the Republican, like I just said. And so they're being very intentional about confusing voters down here. But that's all I got. I wish people would run as who they are, run on your policies, run on your politics. This whole fooling and bamboozling voters about who you are is just dishonest politics, and I know we're going to see it in 2026 and in the future. But let's be real here.